Civil society and corporate strategies. Climate change strategies are not just the responsibility of governments. Changes can be made at every level, and a drive for action from the bottom up, that is, from the people, is informing policy decisions and enforcing governments to take action. Individuals, small groups, or large corporations can be part of the solution. Civil society. Civil society is simply everything outside of the government that establishes the interests of the citizens. It includes non-governmental organisations, institutions, individuals, and local groups of people. Civil society tends to be independent and self-governing. People decide for themselves what their priorities are and what activities they wish to be a part of. In recent years, financiers, individuals and corporations have participated more, and targeted funding is also becoming popular. Citizens' actions stem from self-motivation and an interest in events. Participation in activities gives the individual the opportunity and ability to have an impact on something that is important to them, for example, climate change. Civil society and non-governmental organisations play an important role in actions linked to global climate change. They can improve information access on climate change. They often raise the profile of the most vulnerable groups and give them a voice through advocacy and by drawing attention to their plight in the public arena. They promote responsibility within communities by raising awareness that everyone is responsible for global climate change. They form action groups to raise awareness on how to reduce carbon footprints. They encourage grassroots action to change behaviour through education and awareness campaigns. They let people know how they can take action by turning off appliances when not in use rather than standby mode, using energy-efficient devices such as low-energy washing machines, making home modifications to reduce loss of heat to the outside through windows, doors, roofs and flooring. For example, with efficient windows, wall cavity insulation and ceiling and floor insulation. Decreasing consumption of non-essential goods that utilise energy during production. For example, following the latest fashion can encourage overconsumption and waste. Reducing consumption of non-local goods that need to be transported long distances and which have high road and air miles. Decreasing individual car use and instead walking, cycling, using public transport or sharing vehicles. Purchasing hybrid electric cars which use both petrol and electricity or electric cars. Installing solar and wind power alternatives. Civil society in action. After the Copenhagen Climate Conference in 2009, some non-governmental organisations shifted their focus on climate change to fossil fuel consumption with an initial attention on coal. Action became global in nature as it was increasingly clear that the impacts of global climate change were being felt by many in lower income countries. Civil society organisations that were campaigning for development, the rights of women and indigenous people and other issues combined forces on climate change. The NGO 350.org called upon universities to stop using fossil fuel companies and mounted a big campaign to stop the expansion of an oil pipeline distribution network in the USA and Canada called the Keystone Pipeline. AVAZ, A-V-A-A-Z, an online NGO, uses online petitions, email campaigns, street protests and newspaper adverts to reach support prior to the Paris conference. These actions started the USA and Western Europe. Since these actions started, the USA and Western Europe have abandoned most planned new coal-fired power stations, and globally 900 projects have been abandoned. Consequently, the demand for coal is now on the decline. The 2014 climate talks in New York were unusual because civil society was represented by the heads of business, finance, international organisations, scientists and NGOs. On the 23rd of September 2014, 400,000 people joined the People's Climate March in New York, with thousands of people joining parallel marches around the world. June 2015 saw the Pope publishing an official letter on climate which encouraged faith-based organisations to take Almost every other faith joined the call for action. In addition to action, academics consulted with governments and civil society organisations to gather support and consensus for the way forward. What came out was the following: establishment of 5 yearly reviews which will make governments accountable to civil society for any shortfall in emissions reductions, the acknowledgement that mitigation and adaptation are equally important, the requirement that high-income countries must provide financial strategies in low-income countries. Corporate responsibility. A corporation is a company or group of people that is recognised by the law. It is owned and controlled by its members and is outside of the government. They abide by something called corporate social responsibility, whereby the corporation monitors itself to ensure that it's within the spirit of the law, ethics and accepted models. In some cases, its actions go beyond legal requirements and into improving the general well-being of society. The traditional stance of corporate bodies has been opposition to stronger climate policies. However, at the Paris climate talks, that was seen to change. Many big corporations have begun to argue that stronger climate policies are in the best interests of all businesses. This may be driven by the fact that impacts of climate change are becoming more apparent and that renewable energy sources are far more accessible and cost efficient than in the past. Whatever the reason, many big corporations are taking action. Amazon are using carbon offset by building wind and solar projects to provide power for 90,000 homes. It is aiming for 100% renewable energy as soon as possible. Amazon is also using 100% recyclable packaging for all shipping. Google is also offsetting its carbon and is currently scheduled to be 100% powered by renewable energy for global operations. It is the largest corporate producer of renewable power. The Apple Cupertino campus will be powered totally by renewable energy and 75% natural ventilation. In addition, 95% of materials will be reused or recycled. The company currently boasts that 93% of its global operations run on renewable power. Facebook is part of the Open Compute platform, a group of companies working to improve efficiency of data centre design, the servers and the buildings. Microsoft is looking for innovative solutions to energy use and is turning to new technologies such as biogas and fuel cell energy. It's carbon neutral and supports low-income countries through carbon offset programs. Okay, the next section is on Bangladesh and climate change. So, fast facts about Bangladesh. Geography. It is located on the largest river deltas of the world. Over 60% of the land is less than 5 metres above sea level. It is prone to cyclones and flooding caused by the summer monsoons. Bangladesh suffers from natural disasters, and between 1980 and 2008 it suffered 219 of them. Its location at the head of the Bay of Bengal means that the cyclones that enter the bay are funnelled over Bangladesh, causing major storm surges. This, coupled with the large percentage of low-lying land, makes Bangladesh particularly vulnerable to climate change. Its Human Development Index rank is 140 out of 177. Economy. Its GDP per capita is $3,900 in purchasing power parity. Its population below the poverty line is 31.5%. Its debt is 25.9% of GDP. Over 60% of the population is engaged in farming and lives in rural areas, the low-lying fertile floodplains of the river systems and the delta. People. Population density is approximately 950 people per kilometre squared. The population growth rate of 1.05%. Major infectious diseases include food and waterborne diseases such as diarrhoea, hepatitis, typhoid fever, dengue fever and malaria, and probably coronavirus now as well. Out-migration dominates at 3.1 per 1,000 people. There is a high maternal mortality rate, 167 deaths per 100,000 live births, and infant mortality, 32.9 deaths per 1,000 live births. The literacy rate is only 61.5%. These facts combine to make Bangladesh one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to global climate change. Climate change is expected to increase the number and severity of cyclones, storm surges, floods and flash floods. Flooding is increasing erosion, which is leading to the loss of 10,000 hectares of land each year, and it's weakening coastal defences. Rising sea levels are causing saltwater incursion in the majority of coastal areas. The saltwater is encroaching into surface and groundwater resources, causing shortages of drinking and irrigation water. 2.5 million people in the southwest regularly suffer from water shortages. In contrast to coastal areas, the north and northwest of the country suffer extreme temperatures and drought, also resulting in water shortages. Bangladesh has an agriculturally based economy, with over 60% of the population relying on agriculture for a living. Agriculture relies on the right climatic conditions, so climate change will have a substantial impact on livelihoods and the country's already weak economy. Changes in temperature and rainfall have decreased the amount of land suitable for crop production, thus decreasing yields. Saltwater incursion penetrates 100 kilometres inland, which is increasing food insecurity and jeopardising rice production. This in a country with some of the highest rates of malnutrition in the world. The rate of decline in chronic malnutrition is slowing down, and this is likely to be linked to global climate change. Fisheries are also suffering as over 250 species of fish are sensitive to salinity and temperature conditions. Fishing contributes 3.5% to the Bangladeshi GDP, and fish is a major component of the population's protein intake. With 60% of the land area less than 5 metres above sea level, a rise in sea levels will impact a significant proportion of the population. A rise in sea level of 1 metre will displace 30 million people from 15% of the land that will be inundated. Such inundation will affect agriculture, industry and infrastructure, such as schools and hospitals. The Sundarbans, a UNESCO World Heritage Site which covers 10,000 kilometres square of land along the Bay of Bengal. It consists of dense mangrove swamps and is the largest remaining habitat of the Bengal tiger. This land will suffer greatly from rising sea levels. Towns and cities along the coastal plain will be severely damaged by rising sea levels. Direct damage by floods in the past has included waterlogged infrastructure, loss of industrial production, trade and commerce, damage to utilities such as water and sanitation, which results in the spread of water-related diseases. The urban poor, comprising 40% of the urban population living in squatter settlements and slums, are particularly at risk as the quality of their environment is already compromised.